Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello again, everyone, and thanks for joining us for this Monday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. On the first chart here, first graphic, some pretty windy conditions across the southwest part of the state today, with winds gusting over 50 miles per hour, 53 miles an hour at Cold Bay. Port Hayden a little bit higher than that. And southwest Kodiak Island, AKwx, had a 56 mile per hour wind gust, and Cape Newnham there west of Togiak had 62 miles per hour for a peak wind, with 40 to 50 mile per hour winds also reported across the Pribilofs and over much of the Bristol Bay area into the Kuskokwim Delta. Again, those winds 40 to 45 miles per hour in gusts, like King Salmon, about 40 miles an hour at Bethel, for example. Anyway, yesterday we had a front again that came inland and died over the interior. Another trough doing the same thing, pushing northward and dissipating along the southeast coast and across south central Alaska. And then we're watching the clouds gathering down here associated with that next system coming northward. And we'll see today that tracked right up to just south of the western Alaska Peninsula, and the front right about in this position at 5 a.m. this morning. And that's pulling into Bristol Bay, and again, pretty good gradient with this system, bringing those strong gusty winds there from Kodiak Island up across the southwest interior, out into the Bering Sea, coming back from the northwest on the west side of the system there, but not quite as strong, maybe 20 to gust 35 there across the eastern Aleutians. Not a bad day, just some variable clouds over south central Alaska. It's dry for the North Gulf Coast. A little bit of moisture did get up into the Homer area today, and also Seward picked up a little bit of rain, but nothing too significant. And that extended right up into western Prince William Sound again, but dry off to the east. Variably cloudy, partly sunny kind of day across the southeast coast, with mostly light variable winds in the area there. Moisture here down south of the area across the Queen Charlotte's, and most of the rainfall south of Kodiak State Airport today picked up about 1/10 of an inch over the southern areas there, and really not a whole lot of rain with this, maybe a quarter or a 1/10 to a 1/3 of an inch falling along the Alaska Peninsula, and some moisture again from the Pribilofs down into the eastern Aleutians, but more of a wind than rain producer, this system, but now beginning to weaken. Up to the north, some clouds there with flurries associated with a trough across the north slope on out to the Arctic coast, kind of trailing back down across St. Lawrence Island. Reduced visibilities there from Tin City down to Savunga, and extends down with occasional snow falling today out towards Shemya, and some scattered snow showers around the Adak-Atka area. And on the chart today, you can see that low center tracking up to about this position, roughly 3 or 4 o'clock this afternoon, with rain and showers over the Alaska Peninsula, rain mixing with snow this afternoon across the Pribilofs, and then a band of light rain extending into the Alaska Peninsula, clipping southern Kodiak Island, a few isolated showers along the southern Kenai Peninsula, and the upslope areas of the Aleutian Range in there, and maybe some scattered moisture there around the Kilbark Mountains, but high pressure in over the southeast interior. light winds and again pretty fair conditions with just some variable clouds right through the central interior. Just high stuff coming in over Cook Inlet, northern Cook Inlet, and those dry conditions extending right down the southeast coast with most of the moisture remaining to the south. Otherwise, this trough again brought clouds, mostly cloudy skies, kicked off a few flurries there from the eastern Arctic coast where there was some fog mixed in, and that extended down into the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island and off to the southwest there. Again, most of the snow way out to the western Aleutian areas around Shimia. For tonight, this low tracks pulls back to the west here. The front lifts northward, should be north of St. Paul by 3 a.m. tomorrow morning, and then that'll extend across the Alaska Peninsula, continuing the chance of rain or rain and snow mixed here from the peninsula right up into the southern Kuskokwim Delta. Then that moisture will extend westward there, mostly south of Nunivak Island. Still pretty breezy with the winds. In fact, storm warnings out tonight for Kodiak Island, the western Gulf of Alaska, Barren Islands, and that's about it. Shelikof Strait as well. And the remnants of that front right through here, that'll keep occasional light rain going from western Prince William Sound all the way down to possibly Homer and Seldovia, and up toward Portage and Whittier could see a continuation of some light rain and snow at times. Otherwise pretty dry here over the interior with high pressure basically holding over the Copper River Basin for light winds there and dry conditions with variably cloudy skies to clear or mostly clear conditions right up into the Koyukuk Valley areas and here out to the west, with the winds increasing as you head south at Cape Romanzoff down toward the Nunivak Island area. Gales continuing here in advance of the front through tonight, but the southeast coast looking pretty good. Might see a little bit of it pick up in the winds over the extreme southern areas, just a chance of some light rain maybe reaching Heidelberg. And then we'll see for tomorrow that system mostly pushes on in with just some lingering shower possibilities, probably just Dixon entrance. Otherwise, partly sunny day, maybe partly to mostly sunny there for the southeast coast, with winds maybe getting a little gustier, especially over Lynn Canal. Could see northerlies at about 30 knots and some higher gust conditions over the inside waters, but nothing too serious. Dry, partly sunny, Cordova, Yakutat into Prince William Sound. Variable clouds, northern Cook Inlet, and leftover moisture here, still southeast flow aloft, so that's going to keep a risk of some light rain and snow showers there over the southern Kenai Peninsula, but not too bad for Kodiak Island into Bristol Bay. Some leftover moisture here along the southwest coast. Variably cloudy skies, partly sunny conditions again for the interior. Tanana Valley, even back out toward Selawik with light winds, not much gradient at all, and that persistent trough kind of hung up there along the north slope, keeping a chance of some light snow showers or flurries from the Berks Range on out to the Arctic coast. And should be an improvement here, St. Lawrence Island back into the Bering Strait. Winds increasing though as you head south here for tomorrow. Really not much of a frontal structure at all here, just a lot of clouds and some scattered showers shifting up into the southeast Bering Sea. Lighter winds out to the west and drying out as well. The next system here should stay to the south, kind of slips underneath as that low on Tuesday pulls back to the western Aleutians. And probably this will end up rotating up into the central Aleutians probably Thursday or Thursday night, but until then, just scattered showers out over the eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Still a risk of a shower for Kodiak Island. Dry and fair over the interior with light winds again. Mostly sunny skies in quite a few areas for Wednesday. Definitely dry along the North Gulf Coast, Gulf of Alaska. And it looks like some shower activity will sneak on into the southern southeast coast there. But winds not too bad, and the bulk of the moisture with the frontal boundary staying well to the south. Otherwise, still have a few flurry possibilities there along the north slope and the western Arctic coast. Clouds would be more common than any snowfall will be, but fair conditions with pretty brisk east winds, or actually brisk wind advisories there along the eastern Arctic coast for Wednesday. Temperatures this afternoon, 40s to near 50 here across the Panhandle, 50 degrees at Metlakatla, the warm spot in the state today, 46 in Sitka. Lower to mid 40s there across the northern Panhandle, Elfin Cove, Gustavus, and Juneau, all the way up to Skagway. Same thing here for the North Gulf Coast, lower to mid 40s. Near 40 for Valdez and Anchorage today, 41, Seward and Homer, about 42 there down at Kodiak. Up to the north, Gulkana, 36 degrees. Northway, up above freezing today at 34, and Delta, 41 degrees. Fairbanks edged up above freezing as well with 34 degrees, and 39 there at Healy. 30 degrees in Tanana, 27 Bettles, 19 Arctic Village, and Anatuvik, 3 at Omiat Airfield, -1. The cold spot this afternoon at New Wixit. Actually, -8 at Point Lay was a cold spot this afternoon, but the only two locations below zero that I plotted here, with single numbers and teens here over the northwest into the Bering Strait to St. Lawrence Island, but much milder there on the south coast of the Seward Peninsula, 30s. 30s into the west central interior. Southward, you get into the 40s at Sparravon, 43, Port Allsworth, 43 degrees also. And 30s to lower 40s here along the southwest coast. Upper 30s for the Pribilofs, near 40 here for the Alaska Peninsula, upper 30s out in the Aleutians. And for lows tonight, a little below zero, again, possibly northeastern Copper River Basin. That's actually the Tok Northway area there, but generally above zero, well above zero. Teens and 20s out here to the west, to mid-30s over Bristol Bay, and the Alaska Peninsula, 30s for the southeast coast. Highs for tomorrow, 40s, mid-40s south to lower 40s north of the Panhandle, upper 30s to lower 40s south central Alaska, lower 40s for the Kodiak Island area, all the way out to Unalaska, and maybe a little cooler there, forecasting a high of 29 at Nome, teens to mid-20s up over the northwest, single numbers to the north slope and Arctic coast. Flying weather, good VFR all along the Panhandle. Still have that band of moisture caught up in the southeasterly wind flow. Could bring some marginal conditions at the southern Kenai Peninsula, extending up into western Prince William Sound, through Passage Canal into Whittier. Otherwise, good VFR over a good portion of the state. Tomorrow, look for some marginal conditions up along the Arctic coast from west of Point Lay all the way over to Demarcation Point, and then some marginal VFR southwest Kodiak Island, the peninsula, on up into the Pribilofs there, but could be pretty good VFR, possibly to St. Lawrence Island and back through the Chukchi Sea with a lot of marginal stuff out to the west, but no IFR in the forecast at all. For the passes, therefore, Anatuvik and Adigan, both VFR, and the Alaska Range looking really good as well. Lake Clark, Merrill, rainy, windy, Isabel, Mentasta look to be VFR tomorrow, and Tanita also VFR. Portage VFR, but again, maybe some marginal conditions on the eastern entrance. And for Chilkoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels, 2,000 feet, kind of sliding northwestward there to the Yukon Delta into Norton Sound, maybe out to St. Lawrence Island. But at the surface, north of the Pribilofs, cutting across the North Gulf Coast and through the Panhandle, kind of like it's done a lot this winter. And then 2,000 to 4,000 feet over the western Gulf of Alaska and the Northeast Pacific, kind of extending northward to the eastern Gulf of Alaska. No significant icing expected tomorrow. Pretty icing free here as far as this graphic goes. Not much going on there, but the winds aloft showing ridging here basically in this area. Still a trough down here to the south that's going to move northwestward tomorrow night and into Wednesday, and then when that happens, this high should build back to the west, kind of take over the weather pattern for the Gulf of Alaska and at least southern Alaska. Not much change up to the north. Higher pressure extending all the way into the Arctic, but for tomorrow, we still have the southeast band of winds at 33,000 feet of 50 to 70 knots, a main jet well to the south. And for 9,000 feet, we've got 20 increasing to 40 knots out of the southeast here for the Alaska Peninsula. Actually, the stronger winds now back to the west and northwest, lightening up a little bit along the southwest coast there, and still pretty brisk out toward the Pribilofs. Southerlies with this low pulling westward, 45 knots across the eastern Aleutians, light variable winds over much of the interior areas. Also looking at light winds here for the Panhandle. 3,000 feet, light winds for the Panhandle, but offshore flow there, keeping it dry and light winds up over the central and eastern interior, but 30-knot winds from the south-southeast for the Alaska Peninsula, rolling back up to easterlies there across the Pribilofs and northern Bering Sea. And as far as turbulence goes, pretty smooth over much of mainland Alaska, except for the central Arctic coast. Could see some light chop, and maybe the northern panhandle here could see some areas of mechanical turbulence of the light to very isolated moderate variety, especially for smaller aircraft. And then where the winds are stronger, expect some moderate turbulence, eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula, Nunivak Island, and the Pribilofs. And after the break, hangar flying, I'll be back with a look at the marine forecasts.
Good evening. I'm Harry Keeling, and on behalf of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation and Alaska Public Media, welcome to Hangar Flying. We're welcoming back Dave Baldwin, who was on our program last time, talking about what I think is a pretty fascinating subject that, quite frankly, I don't think a lot of you know very much about, and that is parachutes. Not parachutes that you strap on your back, but parachutes that you have installed in your aircraft. And if you get into that situation where it may mean the difference between walking away from an aircraft accident or not. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. Welcome, Dave.
Thank you.
So in front of you there, you've got your KitFox, model your KitFox, and show the audience where the ballistic parachute resides.
Parachute is right behind the passenger in the back here, and then it's strapped to the upper structure so that when it's deployed, it pops up and it breaks out all this, and then the parachute will hang from the structure in here to bring the airplane down to the ground.
So why would you want one? What situations could you get into where that might be your only means of survival?
At the time that we ordered this, there was a number of mid-air collisions here, and a lot of GA, general aviation aircraft, it's really hard to get out, and most people don't have parachutes, so it gives you a second chance. A lot of reasons why there's been success with these is because there's been mid-air collisions, single engine night operations where they've lost control, pilot incapacitation, spin stall on approach, structural failures, loss of control due to icing, or pilot error, engine out over hostile terrain. And or go up into a canyon that you can't get back out of, and there's just no place to land, and so you slow it down.
Let's look at a couple of those instances. You're up flying around, you have a midair, and one of your control surfaces is damaged, and such to the extent that you can't make a forced landing. That airplane is coming down. It may be your last chance. So how do you deploy the parachute?
There's a handle underneath the dash, and on the Cirrus it's overhead, but you pull it, it's about a 40-pound pull, it's got a little bit of slack, and when you pull it, it's kind of like a pinball machine. When you pull back, you're pulling back a plunger, and once you get so far, it releases that plunger, and then it goes back and hits two igniters, which in turn fires the solid rocket motor, which then deploys the parachute. It's coming out, the rocket is deploying at over 155 miles an hour, and pulls that parachute out rapidly so that it deploys very quickly. So they've had successful deployment within less than 300 feet before impact of the ground.
So with the Air Force ejection seats, which I'm familiar with, the older ones had minimum altitudes or maximum sink rates or airspeeds. Are there any associated with this or with the Cirrus?
It doesn't pull like in your case where it's bringing the pilot up to a minimal height. It just deploys the parachute extremely rapidly, so it gets it out there so it can start inflating right away.
And so I found this very interesting. There have actually been some cases where they've used it on the ground to avoid running into a building. It's almost like a drag chute. Huh?
Yeah, there's one incident I'm aware of where he came in really hot and lost control and was heading for hangars, and so popped it and used it like a drogue chute, and so he slowed it down and prevented major damage.
But not recommended. With a drag chute, you just unhook it and pack it back up and put it back in. I think this probably did a little bit of damage to the aircraft.
Yeah, you want to use it as a last resort because it's definitely going to destroy the components of the airplane.
So talk a little bit about the Cirrus. Is that the first aircraft, or maybe the only aircraft that was commercially available?
It's the first type certified aircraft that was with the FAA's approval to have the parachute as part of the structure. And in their case, they even have where the seat has honeycomb underneath it to assist when they land on the ground, where it gives them a little bit more cushion.
And you have some numbers on how many times it's been successfully deployed?
They've got 6,000 Cirrus aircraft, and there's been 56 deployments with 114 lives saved. That's a ratio of 107 to 1. Whereas the GA, the general aviation, they've had these parachutes out for the last 33 years for 30,000 units that they've sold, and 1 in 120 have been deployed. And 99% success rate on that.
So let's talk about that. We really haven't touched upon that. So you're saying that Cirrus, obviously you can get it from the factory that way, but can you install it in your Cessna 172?
Yes, they've gone to the trouble to already have all the paperwork done. It's already cleared with the FAA. Just a matter of getting it all fitted out through Cessna to put it in the aircraft. For the Cessna 172, 182, it's about 75 pounds, 72 pounds, but they can install it without any problems. Other aircraft would have to get with their manufacturer to do the STSs and everything like that, the paperwork.
And how much?
Well, mine was about $8,000. For the Cessnas, you're talking closer to 14, if I understand correctly.
It sure would give you an extra capability, wouldn't it?
Yes, it's kind of like when you have a fire, you want that fire extinguisher there, if you will. It's kind of the same analogy. So it gives you that. It's nice to know that you have that to back up to anything that might happen. And even your passengers are actually, a lot of people say, well, they might think it's unsafe if you have to have something like that, but actually a lot of them are relieved. But if you're incapacitated or something like that, they actually would successfully be able to bring the airplane down without knowing how to land it.
Right. Well, Dave, we've run out of time, but I sure appreciate you being on the program talking about this great technology. I think it's probably very interesting to our viewers. So thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed tonight's session. In the meantime, fly safe.
Welcome back. Well, today's sea ice analysis looking like this. Got some ice here, the main ice edge there from Kuskokwim Bay on out to the west, just south of St. Lawrence Island in that area there. And really not a lot of change is going to happen here over the next couple of days. And hardly anything down in Bristol Bay and Cook Inlet, really north of the Forelands, appears to have some ice there. Otherwise, it's a pretty soft year again for the ice conditions in the inlet. Moving on to the marine forecasts, easterlies 20 knots here for most of the coast, but southeast on the extreme south coast. Clarence Strait, same forecast, southeast 20 knots, north 20 for Stevens Passage, north at about 20 for Lynn Canal. Then those kick up to about, 20 knots tomorrow there for the canal, northeast 15 for Stevens Passage, southeast 25 for Clarence Strait, so some small craft advisories there. But east to southeast here for the south coast, not too bad at about 20 knots, and then easterlies at 20 to 25 for the north side. And for the North Gulf Coast, easterly winds 15 to 20 knots, looking at northeasterlies at about 15, maybe some higher gusts there for Prince William Sound. Northeast 15 increasing to 20 knots here through Cook Inlet. Small craft advisories for Kachemak Bay and along the east side of Kodiak Island. Then for Wednesday, pretty light winds, northeasterlies, Prince William Sound, right on down into the Barren Islands there at 15 knots. Small craft advisories, east winds, 25 for Kodiak, Shelikof Strait, same forecast, but northeast winds there extend all the way up into northern Cook Inlet and become lighter. For the Alaska Peninsula, southeast winds, 30 knots everywhere, with seas here on the south side running about 16 feet or so, 6 to 8 feet from Bristol Bay down along the northern part of the peninsula area. And then for Wednesday, winds turn more easterly, still carrying small craft advisories there from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev and even on the north side, but Bristol Bay coming down to 20 knots and becoming more northeasterly. Out in the Aleutians, east to northeast winds, 30 knots, 13 to 16 foot seas out there. Tomorrow, northerlies at 30 knots through the central Aleutians with 16 foot seas, lighter conditions out to the west. And then for the Wednesday outlook, southeast winds 25 to 30 knots there for the Fox Islands and eastern Aleutians. More variable and lighter there for Adak and Atka. Turning northerly here to northeast, increasing to 30 knots way out west there, but pretty light here off to the east. And for the southwest coast, easterlies 25 knots. That's still good for small craft advisories there south of Nunivak Island. Northeasterlies at 20. North of there to St. Lawrence Island into the northern Bering Sea. Strongest winds will be found around the Pribilofs, where they'll be east or east-northeast at about 30 knots. Then for Wednesday, those turn southeast at the same speed with northeast 25, so small craft advisories from the Pribilofs up into the northern Bering Sea, otherwise easterly winds at 20 for the remainder of the area. Up along the Arctic coast, easterly winds at 20 knots for tomorrow, lighter here west and even northerly 10 to 15 from Wales to Cape Beaufort. And for Wednesday, not much change, still light northerlies 10 to 15 there, but easterly winds 20 knots, western and central coast, and then brisk wind advisories for the eastern coastline, again all the way out to Demarcation Point. And for tonight again, still a chance of rain here, southern Kenai Peninsula, western Prince William Sound, back down along the mountains there, and then with this frontal boundary, chance of moisture continues there, but nothing too heavy. Still pretty gusty winds, especially in advance of the front. Storm warnings tonight, again for the Kodiak Island area, Barren Islands, western Gulf of Alaska. Then for tomorrow will be a pretty good day over the southeast coast. Fair over the interior here with some sunshine, dry conditions. This trough keeps a chance of some flurries up there over the North Slope and Arctic coast. Showery and breezy out here over the Alaska Peninsula, eastern Aleutian, still a chance of showers along the southwest coast, nothing significant at all. And then for Wednesday, fair skies, partly to mostly sunny conditions, light winds over the interior, showery out to the west, fair over the panhandle. Have a great evening. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Find a living in fisheries. The UAS Fisheries Technology Program offers online study from anywhere in Alaska, plus labs and workshops in many Alaska towns.
Is most likely a chum.
Find your living without leaving where you are. Fisheries Technology from UAS.